Genesis chapter 10, often referred to as the Table of Nations, provides a genealogical record of the descendants of Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, after the flood. The chapter lists 70 nations, which are believed to represent the known world at the time of its writing. These nations, or people groups, are the ancestors of various ethnic and tribal groups that would spread across the earth. This genealogical account is not just a list of names, but serves to illustrate the fulfillment of God's command to Noah and his sons to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Genesis 9:1. It emphasizes the expansion of humanity into distinct regions and peoples. The descendants of each of Noah's sons are grouped by their respective lines. The descendants of Japheth are primarily associated with regions to the north and west, often identified with the peoples of Europe and parts of Asia. Ham's descendants are connected to regions south of Israel, including parts of Africa and the Near East, while Shem's descendants are linked with the Semitic peoples, such as the Hebrews, and regions of the Middle East and Asia. The table also contains various nations and cities named after specific individuals, demonstrating the spread of people groups and their foundational roles in establishing the world's nations. The number 70 is symbolic, representing completeness or the fullness of nations in the biblical worldview. This number may not be strictly literal, but serves to underscore the idea that the descendants of Noah's sons formed a complete and diverse global community. The list provides insight into the biblical perspective on the origin of various peoples, cultures, and languages, and it sets the stage for the subsequent narrative of God's covenant with Abraham, the father of the Hebrew nation. The Table of Nations thus functions both as a historical record and as a theological reflection on the diversity of humanity and God's plan for the nations. Welcome, family. In today's video, we'll dive into the scriptures to explore the connection between the Good Shepherd and the 70 shepherds in Enoch, how it ties into the divine governance of the 70 nations of Genesis 10. We'll begin with a vision shared by Daniel, then Enoch, about the 70 shepherds. These aren't just ordinary shepherds. They represent the angels set over each of the 70 nations in the earth, each one assigned to guide and protect its people. We'll also touch on how this concept connects to the prophetic words found in scriptures that point to YAHUAH's eternal relationship with Israel. Grab your Bibles and open your hearts as we uncover these powerful connections and insights. Let's get started. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto you, and stand upright, for unto you am I now sent. And when he had spoken this word unto me, I stood trembling. Then said he unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you did set your heart to understand, and to chasten yourself before your Elohim, your words were heard, and I am come for your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But, lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now I am come to make you understand at what shall befall your people in the latter days. For yet the vision is for many days. And when he had spoken such words unto me, I set my face toward the ground, and I became dumb. Daniel 10:11-15. I saw that YAHUAH of the sheep made a great slaughter among them in their pasture, until they cried out to him in consequence of that slaughter. Then he departed from the place of his habitation, and left them in the power of lions, tigers, wolves, and the hyenas, and in the power of foxes, and of every beast, and the wild beasts began to tear them. I saw, too, that he forsook the house of their fathers and their tower, giving them all into the power of lions to tear and devour them, into the power of every beast. Then I began to cry out with all my might, imploring YAHUAH of the sheep, and showing him how the sheep were devoured by all the beasts of prey. But he looked on in silence, rejoicing that they were devoured, swallowed up, and carried off, and leaving them in the power of every beast for food. He called also 70 shepherds, and resigned to them the sheep, that they might overlook them. Enoch, 89, 90 to 94, saying to them and to their associates, every one of you henceforward overlook the sheep, and whatsoever I command you, do, and I will deliver them to you numbered. I will tell you which of them shall be slain, these destroy. And he delivered the sheep to them. Then he called to another and said, understand, and watch everything which the shepherds shall do to these sheep, for many more of them shall perish than I have commanded. Of every excess and slaughter which the shepherds shall commit, there shall be an account, as how many may have perished by my command, and how many they may have destroyed of their own heads. Of all the destruction by each of the shepherds, there shall be an account, and according to the number I will cause a recital to be made before me, how many they have destroyed of their own heads, and how many they have delivered up to destruction, that I may have this testimony against them, that I may know all their proceedings, and that, delivering to them, I may see what they will do, whether they will act as I have commanded them, or not. Enoch, 89, 95 to 99. However, they shall be ignorant. Neither shall you make any explanation to them, neither shall you reprove them, but there shall be an account of all the destruction done by them in their respective seasons. Then they began to kill and destroy more than it was commanded them, and they left the sheep in the power of the lions, so that very many of them were devoured and swallowed up by lions and tigers, and wild boars preyed upon them. That tower they burnt and overthrew that house. Then I grieved extremely on account of the tower, and because the house of the sheep was overthrown. Neither was I afterwards able to perceive whether they again entered that house. The shepherds likewise and their associates delivered them to all the wild beasts, that they might devour them. Each of them in his season, according to his number, was delivered up. Each of them, one with another, was described in a sefer. How many of them, one with another, were destroyed in a sefer. Enoch, 89 to 104. More, however, than was ordered, everyone killed and destroyed. Then I began to weep, and was greatly indignant on account of the sheep. In like manner also I saw in the vision him who wrote, how he wrote down one, destroyed by the shepherds, every day. He ascended, remained, and exhibited each of his sepharim to YAHUAH of the sheep, all which they had done, and all which each of them had made away with, and all which they had delivered up to destruction. He took the sefer up in his hands, read it, sealed it, and deposited it. Enoch, 89 to 105 to 109. After this, I saw shepherds overlooking for 12 hours, and behold, 3 of the sheep departed, arrived, went in, and began building all which was fallen down of that house. But the wild boars hindered them, although they prevailed not. Again they began to build as before, and raised up that tower, which was called a lofty tower. And again they began to place before the tower a table, with every impure and unclean kind of bread upon it. Enoch, 89 to 110 to 114. Moreover, also all the sheep were blind, and could not see, as were the shepherds likewise. Thus were they delivered up to the shepherds for a great destruction, who trod them under foot, and devoured them. Yet was their Adonai silent, until all the sheep in the field were destroyed. The shepherds and the sheep were all mixed together, but they did not save them from the power of the beasts. Then he who wrote the Sefer ascended, exhibited it, and read it at the residence of YAHUAH of the sheep. He petitioned him for them and prayed, pointing out every act of the shepherds and testifying before him against them all. Then taking the Sefer, he deposited it with him and departed. Chanakh, Enoch, 89, 115 to 118.
Enoch 90. And I observed during the time that thus 37 shepherds were overlooking, all of whom finished in their respective periods as the first. Others then received them into their hands, that they might overlook them in their respective periods, every shepherd in his own period. Afterwards I saw in the vision that all the birds of heaven arrived, eagles, the aves, kites, and ravens. The eagle instructed them all. They began to devour the sheep, to peck out their eyes and to eat up their bodies. The sheep then cried out, for their bodies were devoured by the birds. I also cried out and groaned in my sleep against the shepherd which overlooked the flock. And I looked, while the sheep were eaten up by the dogs, the eagles, and the kites. They neither left them their body, nor their skin, nor their muscles, until their bones alone remained, until their bones fell upon the ground, and the sheep became diminished. I observed likewise during the time that 23 shepherds were overlooking, who completed in their respective periods 58 periods. Then were small lambs born of those white sheep, who began to open their eyes and to see, crying out to the sheep. The sheep, however, cried not out to them, neither did they hear what they uttered to them, but were deaf, blind, and obdurate in the greatest degrees. I saw in the vision that ravens flew down upon those lambs, that they seized one of them, and that tearing the sheep in pieces they devoured them. I saw also that the horns grew upon those lambs, and that the ravens lighted down upon their horns. I saw too that a large horn sprouted out an animal among the sheep, and then their eyes were open. He looked at them. Their eyes were wide open, and he cried out to them. Then the Debella saw him, all of whom ran to him. And besides this, all the eagles, the aves, the ravens, and the kites were still carrying off the sheep, flying down upon them and devouring them. The sheep were silent, but the Debella lamented and cried out. Then the ravens contended and struggled with them. They wished among them to break his horn, but they prevailed not over him. I looked unto them, unto the shepherds. The eagles, the aves, the kites came, who cried out to the ravens to break the horns of the Debella, to contend with him and to kill him. But he struggled with them and cried out that help might come to him. Then I perceived that a man came who had written down the names of the shepherds, and who ascended up before YAHUAH of the sheep. He brought assistance, and caused everyone to see him descending to the help of the Debella. I perceived likewise that YAHUAH of the sheep came to them in wrath, while all those who saw him fled away. All fell down in his tabernacle before his face, while all the eagles, the aves, the ravens, and the kites assembled, and brought with them all the sheep of the field. All came together and strove to break the horn of the Debella. Then I saw that the man who wrote the Sefer at the word of YAHUAH opened up the Sefer of destruction, and that destruction which the last 12 shepherds wrought, and brought out before YAHUAH of the sheep, that they destroyed more than those who preceded them. I saw also that YAHUAH of the sheep came to them, and taking in his hand the scepter of his wrath, seized the earth, which became rent asunder, while all the beasts and birds of heaven fell from the sheep, and sunk into the earth which closed over them. I saw too that a large sword was given to the sheep, who went forth against all the beasts of the field to slay them. But all the beasts and birds of heaven fled away before their face. And I saw a throne erected in a delectable land. Upon this sat YAHUAH of the sheep, who received all the sealed seraphim which were opened before him. Then YAHUAH called the first 7 white ones, and commanded them to bring before him the first of the first stars which preceded the stars, whose form partly resembled that of horses. The first star which fell down first, and they brought them all before him. And he spoke to the man who wrote in his presence, who was one of the 7 white ones, saying, Take those 70 shepherds, to whom I delivered up the sheep, and receiving them killed more of them which I commanded. Behold, I saw them all bound and standing before him. First came on the trial of the stars, which being judged and found guilty, went to the place of punishment. They thrust them into the deep, full of flaming fire and full of pillars of fire. Then the 70 shepherds were judged, and being found guilty, were thrust into the flaming abyss. At that time, like to these were brought the blind sheep, which being judged and found guilty, were all thrust into that abyss of fire on the earth and burned. The abyss was on the right of that house, and I saw the sheep burning and their bones consuming. I stood beholding him emerge the ancient house, while they brought out its pillars, every plank in it, and the ivory enfolding in it. They brought it out and deposited it in a place on the right side of the house. I also saw that YAHUAH of the sheep produced a new house, great and loftier than the former, which he bound by the former circular spot. All its pillars were new, and its ivory new, as well as much abundant than the former ancient, which he had brought out. And while all the sheep which were left were in the midst of it, all the beasts of the earth, all the birds of heaven fell down and worshipped them, petitioning them and obeying them in everything. Then those 3 who were clothed in white, and who, holding me by my hand, had before caused me to ascend, while the hand of him who spoke held me, raised me up, and placed me in the midst of the sheep, before the judgment took place. The sheep were all white with wool, long and pure. Then all who had perished and had been destroyed, every beast of the field and every bird of heaven, assembled in that house, while YAHUAH of the sheep rejoiced with great joy, because all were good, and had come back to his dwelling. And I saw that they laid the sword which had been given to the sheep, and returned it to his house, sealing it up in the presence of YAHUAH. All the sheep would have been enclosed in that house, and had it been capable of containing them, and the eyes of all were open, gazing on the good one. Nor was there one among them who did not behold him. I likewise perceived that the house was large, wide, and extremely full. I saw too that a white cow was born, whose horns were great, and that all the beasts of the field and all the birds of heaven were alarmed at him, and entreated him at all times. Then I saw that the nature of all of them was changed, and that they became white cows, and that the first in the midst of them spoke when the word was a wild ox. Upon the head of that wild ox were great and black horns, while YAHUAH's sheep rejoiced over them and over all the cows. I lay down in the midst of them. I awoke and saw the whole. This is the vision which I saw, lying down and waking. Then I blessed YAHUAH of righteousness and gave glory to him. Afterwards I wept abundantly, nor did my tears cease, so that I became incapable of enduring it. While I was looking on, they flowed on account of what I saw, for all was come and gone by. Every individual circumstance respecting the conduct of mankind was seen by me. And that night I remembered my former dream, and therefore wept and was troubled, because I had seen that vision. That was Enoch chapter 90.
And the word of YAHUAH came unto me, saying, Son of Adam, prophesy against the shepherds of Yasharel. Prophesy, and say unto them, Thus says Adonai YAHUAH unto the shepherds, Woe be to the shepherds of Yasharel that do feed themselves. Should not the shepherds feed the flocks? Ye eat the fat, and ye clothe you with the wool. Ye kill them that are fed, but ye feed not the flock. The diseased have ye not strengthened, neither have ye healed that which was sick, neither have ye bound up that which was broken, neither have ye brought again that which was driven away, neither have ye sought that which was lost. But with force and with cruelty have ye ruled them. and they were scattered, because there is no shepherd. And they became food for all the beasts of the field, when they were scattered. Yechezkel, Ezekiel 34, 1-5. O Zion, that bring good news, get you up into the high mountain. O Jerusalem, that bring good news, lift up your voice with strength. Lift it up, be not afraid. Say unto the cities of Yehudah, behold your Elohim. Behold, Adonai Yahuwah will come with strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. He shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with his arm, and carry them in his bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with young. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who has directed the Ruach YAHUAH, or being his counselor has taught him? YAHUAH, Isaiah 49-13. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. But he that is a hireling, and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, sees the wolf coming, and leaves the sheep, and flees. And the wolf catches them, and scatters the sheep. The hireling flees, because he is a hireling, and cares not for the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and am known of mine. As the Father knows me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Yochanan, John 10:11-15. For even hereunto were ye called, because Mashiach also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye should follow his steps. Who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. Who, when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judges righteously, who his own self bore our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sins, should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed. For ye were as sheep going astray, but are now returned unto the shepherd and overseer of your souls. Kepha Rishon, 1 Peter 2:21-25. When El Elyon divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of men, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Yasharel. For Yahuwah's portion is his people. Yaakov is the lot of his inheritance. Devarim, Deuteronomy 32:8-9. For in the division of the nations of the whole earth, he set a ruler over every people. But Yasharel is Yahuwah's portion, whom, being his firstborn, he nourishes with discipline, and giving him the light of his love, does not forsake him. Sirach, Ecclesiasticus 17:17-18. Yet now hear, O Yaakov my servant, and Yasharel, whom I have chosen. Thus says Yahuwah that made you, and formed you from the womb, which will help you. Fear not, O Yaakov, my servant, and you, Yasharun, whom I have chosen. For I will pour water upon him that is thirsty, and floods upon the dry ground. I will pour my ruach upon your seed, and my blessing upon your offspring. And they shall spring up as among the grass, as willows by the watercourses. One shall say, I am Yahuwah's, and another shall call himself by the name of Yaakov, and another shall subscribe with his hand unto Yahuwah, and surname himself by the name of Yasharel. Yeshayahu, Isaiah 44:1-5. If you had not always slain my chosen, exalting the stroke of your hands, and saying over their dead when you were drunken, set forth the beauty of your countenance. The reward of your whoredom shall be in your bosom, therefore shall you receive recompense, like as you have done unto my chosen. says YAHUAH. Even so shall Elohim do unto you, and shall deliver you into mischief. Your children shall die of hunger, and you shall fall through the sword. Your cities shall be broken down, and all yours shall perish with the sword in the field. Ezra Revai, 4 Ezra, 15:53-57. These things hast thou done, and I kept silence. Thou thoughtest that I was altogether such an one as thyself, but I will reprove thee, and set them in order before thine eyes. Psalm 50, verse 21, King James Version.